since the COVID years, I've seen perimenopause and menopause starting a lot earlier, which is concerning to me. It's just something that I'm noticing, that I feel like every woman from 40 upwards is starting to have perimenopause symptoms. And I have a lot of patients going into perimenopause like 47, 48, 49, where I would say before COVID, it was perimenopause was starting 47, 48, and most of my patients were going into menopause maybe 51, 52, except for the outliers.
You maybe explain to our listeners who might not understand why, because they might be thinking, oh, it's great that I'm going into perimenopause sooner. I can get done with my periods sooner. Yay! Can you maybe explain to them why it's actually not that great?
Yes, from a purely physical things, the big things about going into menopause earlier, estrogen protects us from a lot of things. And one of the big things is...
Today's guest is Dr. Benita Perch in Hong Kong, of all places. Now, one of my big goals for this podcast is really to get homeopaths from all around the world to come and talk to us about what homeopathy is like in their country of residence. And it was so fun having a chat with Dr. Benita today. Our conversation took a completely interesting turn that, we didn't plan on. And we ended up focusing a lot on perimenopause and menopause and hormones and some questions that we have around how women's health are changing post-COVID. So this ended up being an incredibly interesting conversation. I really loved it and learned a lot from it, and I think our listeners will as well. So thank you to Benita for playing along and actually, being able to just roll with the conversation and just indulging my curiosity in what's happening, with women's hormones at the moment. So thank you so much for that, Benita. It was a lot of fun. For our listeners, I highly encourage you to go and check out their website, imi.com.hk. So you will find the most incredible group of holistic practitioners all working together at this clinic in Hong Kong. So you've got Benita, who is a homeopath and also naturopathic doctor. You have got various clinical nutritionists, medical herbalists, various naturopathic doctors working there, psychotherapists, psychologists, counseling psychologists, and clinical psychologists, professional counselors, play therapists, craniosacral, Bowen, osteopath, TCM practitioners, a medical GP, acupuncturist, and nutritional therapist. Holy moly, can you imagine if we have a world where this is just the norm and all of these incredible naturopathic practitioners are working together with the GP and, getting the best outcome for our clients? Now, lucky for you, you don't have to be in Hong Kong to be able to get an appointment with Dr. Benita. She does do consults online as well, so you can book through her clinic. And Dr. Benita is also part of GNHS, so Global Natural Health Solutions. So thank you to Mickey and Kim Elia, who put me in touch with Benita through their organization. You can find more information on them at gnhshealing.com. So enjoy the episode. This was loads of fun. I found it incredibly informative, and I hope you will too. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now our mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout, where today I have a very interesting guest for you, all the way from Hong Kong via a few other countries, Dr. Benita Perch. Welcome to the show, Benita.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, we always start our show off with the same question. How were you first introduced to homeopathy?
So I went to naturopathic school in the US, and it was interesting. So I was always interested in herbs and that side of things before. Didn't really know much about homeopathy. And we were really blessed. The homeopathy department at the school that I went to in Arizona was run by a man named Stephen Messer, who is sort of a giant in homeopathy. And he came back from running a practice for 40 years to come and teach. And so just within my first year and the first couple of classes, I was like hooked. It was just like, this is amazing. And it just clicked with my brain, right? The fact that we need to, like, the puzzle and the science behind homeopathy, obviously homeopathy is always looked at the pseudo science. And I'm like, no, you have no idea the detail to find the right remedy, understand rubrics, take a good case. So I just took to it, and I was like, I know that this is a huge part of what my future is going to be. And it just continued from that. I was just very lucky in my clinical years to take on a lot of homeopathic shifts, and I got to stay and do a residency and do extra training in homeopathy. So yeah, so literally it was from my first class in my first year. I was like, this is it. I want to do this. I love this.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit more because our listeners might hear. I was just saying before we start recording, you've got such a cool accent. I can hear lots of different countries in there. But tell us a little bit more because you studied in a couple of different places and now you're in Hong Kong. And I have never had a guest on from Hong Kong. I don't think. We've had over 450 episodes now, but I don't think
Wow.
there's been anyone from Hong Kong.
Anyone from Hong Kong, yeah?
Yeah.
So I'm originally South African. I was born and bred in Cape Town till I
Me
was
too.
18. Ah,
Till I
cool.
was 17.
And oh wow, okay. So
Yeah.
you've
Snap.
got a stronger Australian accent. And then I always kind of knew I wanted to do medicine, but I wasn't really ready to start medicine straight out of school. I really wanted to go study overseas. I was lucky that my father was in a position to allow me to do that. So I applied to do my undergrad in the US. And I went to a school called Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire for 2 years. But I ended up actually, this is what sort of got me interested in natural medicine. I ended up getting really sick when I was there. What eventually was diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, my understanding as years gone by was probably mold in the dorms in Dartmouth because it was very old school. And so I ended up coming home for a year, taking a year off, getting treated by sort of natural doctors. And then I moved to London to do my undergrad in nutrition. I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do for now. But within my first year or two, because it was a very old school nutrition degree at King's, I kind of knew this wasn't enough or right. And I'd come across naturopathic medicine while I was working in a pharmacy in Cape Town, a book by a man by the name of Michael Murray. And I was reading about it. I was like, wait a minute, I can do this. I can do the medicine side with all the natural medicine. It exists. And I started to research that. So during my end of my second year, I applied to naturopathic medical schools in the US. So after 3 years of London, I moved to Arizona for naturopathic school, where I spent 4 years in school, and then I did a year residency after that. And that's where I fell in love with homeopathy. And then at the end of that, I ended up starting to date a very old friend of mine. So I came home to South Africa for about a year and a half, and I got actually taught within the school in Cape Town. There's a fledgling school for naturopathy. But then my father had lived and worked in Hong Kong for a very long time, and he kind of gave us the opportunity for my husband to come work for him and for us to move here. So we did that in 2011 now. Gosh, so many years ago. So that is how I ended up in Hong Kong, where I've been. And then we also did about 4 years during COVID years. We moved to Thailand, to Phuket for about 4 years, and then we moved back to Hong Kong about 2 years. So yes, I've been a
Wow.
bit all over the place, treat people from all over the place, all over the world, which has been fascinating, right? To just treat different
Mm.
cultures and humans and everything.
And just have to put in there as well, the mold picture, holy moly, I did never really realize how huge mold is until a friend of mine got incredibly sick 6 years ago and her daughter and had this unexplained illness and they started talking about mold and I'm like, wow. And then just went down this rabbit hole.
Wonderful.
Holy moly. And once you start seeing all the clinical pictures that mold can present as, it's almost hard not to brush everyone with a mold. I sometimes have to think, okay,
Totally.
Eugenie, not everyone has mold.
Not everyone
Not
has it, but
everyone, but
a lot of
yeah,
people have.
way more than what we actually realize as quite incredible.
Absolutely.
Now, you have this unbelievable center in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
imi.com.hk. So it's called the Integrated Medicine Institute. And I had a look on your website. It looks unbelievable. You have a whole pile of incredible practitioners from all sorts of modalities in one place. And it just like when you look at it, it's like this is what healing should look like.
Yeah.
All of these different modalities in one place. Talk us to us a little bit about the center because that looks really fascinating.
Yeah, we are very lucky. It was founded by an Australian naturopath by the name of Graham Bradshaw. I don't know how long ago now, like somewhere to maybe 30 years ago. Like the 10 years keep adding on. And he had this dream to establish this, and he was the first person to do naturopathy in Hong Kong. And it's grown since then, right? So we have medical doctors, we have osteopaths, we have psychologists and counselors, and then we have a very strong team of naturopaths and naturopathic doctors. And then we also have an Indian trained homeopath as well. And then we also have some people who do sort of holistic healing, like craniosacral and health coaching and a good nutritional therapist. So it's quite amazing because under one roof, we then can refer to each other and work together. And that's the whole idea, right? That we give the patient the best of everything, but also we talk to each other because a lot of the time it can be quite challenging for patients that they hear one thing from one person, another from another person, and no one's actually working together. And I even feel like we could be doing more, like as great as our center is. I feel it would be great to have even more, right? Like I have a bigger dream of what I would love to have, sort
And
of.
just talking with
Yeah,
other practitioners and just, you can learn so much from each other. I'm just even thinking of one of the
absolutely.
dentists that I interviewed on the podcast. And when she started talking about like the size of the jaw and your palate and how your nasal passages rest on that. And I'm like, wow, that's a whole other area I didn't even
Area,
think. And as soon
totally.
as I chatted with her, I started seeing different things in my clinic. And I'm like, oh, actually, you can cross refer to this. And then once you've had that fixed, then I can help you even more. So it's, yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. I
there's
found that with osteopathy as well. We've had some amazing osteopaths over the years. And like when we work together, especially with an osteo who uses a lot of visceral work and craniosacral, it's amazing because then what I do it just speeds healing as you open up things structurally as well. So 100%. It's quite incredible.
It is really cool. Now, I actually discovered you through the lovely Mickey and Kim Elia
Mhm.
because they have this incredible organization called Global Natural Health Solutions. And we've had a few of the practitioners from that on the show. I don't know where Mickey and Kim found all of you amazing people, but I'm really glad that they've put me in touch with all of you because there's been some amazing guests from Global Natural Health Solutions that's been on the podcast, and you're no exception. Once I went to go look at your bio, I'm like, holy moly, where are they finding all these people? But how did you get involved with Global Natural Health Solutions? What's the link there?
So a lot of this comes down to most of us are graduates from what was Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine and now Sonora. And we were all trained in this very beautiful training of homeopathy. And the Kim was very involved too. He did some extra training for us. We all learned radar, which now I don't know which one they're using at the moment. So he had the license for everything. So that's how. So we're quite a tight community within the naturopathic doctors in the US who've been trained in sort of old school good homeopathy. And so we all know each other.
Oh, I
And
love that. That's so important to have that network. You have to tell me what homeopathy in Hong Kong is like. Is it well accepted? Do people even know what it is? Can you find it in pharmacies? What is it like over there?
no, not at all, right? It's like this, especially among like I have a lot of 50% of my patients are like local Chinese communities. So the best way I explain it to them is like, it's kind of like acupuncture, right? We're working on the vitality of the body to stimulate healing. And that's how I explain what homeopathy does. So actually, in some ways, it's an easier door in because in a lot of communities, trying to explain, oh, I'm doing sort of an energetic medicine, which I know homeopathy is not, but that's how we try and explain it. And they look at you like, really? Where here they're like, they already understand that concept because of acupuncture. So in some ways, they're more open to it. But yeah, no, it's not available at all anywhere in Hong Kong. I think we have a big dispensary. We bring in our homeopathic remedies from a pharmacy in the UK and we make them all here. You can get some on iHerb, and there's maybe one other clinic in Causeway Bay. It's an old school chiro naturopathic doctor who has homeopathy. Otherwise, no, there's homeopathy does not exist at all. So it's quite interesting. Yeah,
You definitely have a good in there because if somebody is at least open to energy medicine, definitely it's a way easier concept to understand than,
totally.
somebody over here that believes more mechanistic. Really interesting. And so how do you, I mean, so you can get your medicines in okay, and
Yeah.
you're like the government leaves the homeopaths alone. They don't have any
Yeah,
issues there.
we're like a non-entity in Hong Kong. They've looked at us as naturopathy. They looked at doing some type of registration, but there's so few of us that it wasn't worth, and then COVID happened and everything, so it wasn't worth their while to try and, which is good and bad. It's good because we're kind of left alone, but it's bad in the sense of we have set up like an association and we try and have standards, but it does mean that anybody can call themselves a homeopath and a naturopath, whether they've done a weekend course or whether they've done a 4-year degree full time, like I have, right? So it's a positive and negative. Positive, we're left alone, but negative in the sense of it's not always good for the consumer because they don't know that there's a huge difference between seeing X and
Mm.
Y. We try and do that job. So IMI, obviously, we have very high standards of who's allowed to practice within our institute, and then we try and educate as well the difference, right? So
We're in that
yeah,
funny place here in Australia
yeah,
as well, where we're not
as well,
regulated.
right?
So
Yeah,
anybody can call themselves a homeopath and a naturopath. And believe me, like everybody does. And it
yeah,
really breaks my heart. I don't know, there's good and bad to everything, right? Because we weren't mandated during COVID. So we get away with a lot because we're not regulated. But
yeah,
at the same time, it is a buyer beware market because the consumer has no idea of identifying what is a well-trained practitioner and who's not. And also because the schools are not regulated, you can call
yeah.
your qualification anything you want. over here. So you can call it super advanced, best clinical practitioner in the world. And somebody goes, oh, that sounds like a great qualification. I'm going to do that weekend course. And then I'm going to be a super qualified advanced practitioner in homeopathy. But it's kind of like, but people don't realize that.
No,
So there's a lot of education that's needed around that.
needed. Totally. And I think that's where it's good with organizations like what Mickey and I are doing. I'm also quite involved in the World Naturopathic Federation, where we're trying to get standards, on a worldwide level and bring, it's really difficult also between countries because there's so many different levels of training and everything. But if we can get to a more standardized level
And we
for the
practice so
profession,
differently as well. And it's not necessarily that, like a classical style is more valid than a, I don't know, more intuitive mega potency
no,
style or whatever. They each have their place. So, like, how do you standardize it? I don't
we
know. This is a really tricky conversation, right? So maybe just, I keep coming back to this. Should we have different names for the style of which we practice? And then there's like kind of a
yeah,
website where you go,
maybe.
okay, this
Yeah,
is the style and this is, I don't know, like, because it's all that you just don't want the consumer to brush you under the same stroke as somebody who's done a weekend course in homeopathy, right?
absolutely,
So
absolutely. So
anyway, it's something I sit with a lot, and clearly you do too.
absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about how it works over there in your practice. How do you guys work with, like, if a client walks in the door there, how would you go about helping them?
So I'm pretty much like, I always say I'm like a natural medicine GP, right? So I treat everything from colds and flus to rheumatoid arthritis to depression. I treat little, tiny, just born babies to 90-year-old patients, right? But as I mentioned earlier, like my preference, my core market is I really work with women between 30 and 60 who are starting perimenopause, menopause, working women, burnt out women, and trying to help them be on top of their game. Because Hong Kong's a hectic city, right? It's not a Lala city. Like life is like you start boom, 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 your days, everything is hectic, which is good in a lot of ways, but hard in others. So yeah. So generally, patient walks in my room, I spend a good 70 minutes with a new patient. I'm trained obviously as a naturopathic doctor, so I've got to first do all the doctor side, make sure like lab work's been done and a diagnosis, and I understand. And I have to be in Hong Kong, I can't really be a primary care physician, so I always want to make sure my patients they have a primary care doctor or a specialist that they're working with to make sure that things are not getting missed and the right testing is being done. And then I will move more into looking at the subclinical functional medicine stuff and what's going on. And then I'll do the full homeopath. Within that, obviously, I'm constantly repertorizing, homeopathic symptoms because I'm picking up as I'm taking the history. And then I always sort of finish a case with looking at the very specific homeopathic questions to then find the right remedy. So that's my first visit. And then my practice is quite busy. So I try to get people in, but usually often, if they're doing testing and stuff, I'll see them about a month later. Generally, I see people every 6 weeks to 2 months to just check in, but they have my email. They'll check in with me in between. And then, yeah, my follow-ups are usually around 40 minutes. And then we're just checking in to see what's going on, how the symptoms doing. Are they better? Are they the same? Are they worse, kind of thing. But it works well. I feel like I do a lot of, I'm sure we all do as homeopaths in this world too, a lot of counseling along the way too. A lot of the time people, I guess it's just somebody cares, right? Somebody wants to listen. Somebody really does care what's going on with them as opposed to just dismissing them and saying, take this or take this medicine and off you go in the world. And I think that's what humans are craving at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. With the perimenopause side of things, have you noticed any trends? Because you've been doing this for a little while. What sort of things have you seen over the years?
Worryingly, since the COVID years, I've seen perimenopause and menopause starting a lot earlier, which is concerning to me. I don't, obviously we have no data to back, there's not a lot of research in it. It's just something that I'm noticing that I feel like every woman from 40 upwards is starting to have perimenopause symptoms. And I have a lot of patients going into perimenopause like 47, 48, 49, where I would say before COVID, it was perimenopause was starting 47, 48, and most of my patients were going into menopause maybe 51, 52, except for the outliers. So that's a huge difference I've noticed, is that I'm really treating perimenopause so much earlier. And also what's quite interesting too, what I've noticed is I get patients to track their cycles a lot, and I do a lot of blood testing, and we try to figure out what ovulation was. And classically with perimenopause, it's always used to be that progesterone would go down first, and your second half of the cycle would be why your periods were coming earlier. But what I've noticed recently in trends over the years is that, and this is where I think there is a link to egg quality being affected somehow, is that a lot of the time my patients are having shorter periods earlier because their eggs aren't making it to ovulation on day 14, but the second half of their cycles are actually still fine. So something has shifted too. It's like the egg quality is not lasting longer, and it's the first part of the cycle that's shorter. So that to me has been a really interesting trend that I've noticed quite substantially, which makes me think there is an oxidative stress. There's something that has shifted in the bodies that has caused perimenopause to be coming earlier, and it's not the traditional way where it usually was, where progesterone started to go down. It's still the progesterone, but there's other things going on. So that's been really interesting. So yeah, I feel like I'm just every female that walks into my office who's late 30s, 40s is having some type of menstrual hormonal stuff going on.
It's a huge concern because I've only been in practice, what, 14 years or so, but
Mhm.
I've noticed it more so around fertility, where if
Yeah,
people had any sort of infertility, unexplained infertility, doesn't matter. I knew that I could get them pregnant
get the
pretty
pregnant.
easily,
Yeah,
but it's definitely a lot harder now.
yeah,
And yeah, it's a real worry.
it
It's a
really
real
is.
worry.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you maybe
I've
explain to our
Go ahead.
listeners who might not understand why, because they might be thinking, oh, it's great that I'm going into perimenopause sooner. I can get done with my periods sooner. Yay. Can you maybe explain to them why it's actually not that great?
Yes, from a purely physical things, the big things about going into menopause earlier, estrogen protects us from a lot of things. And one of the big things is cognitive and Alzheimer's. So going into perimenopause earlier and losing our estrogen and our hormones earlier means that I have got a greater chance of dementia later in life. The other big thing is bones. The earlier you go into menopause, the more chance you've got of having osteopenia and osteoporosis earlier. Also cardiovascular health as well. So cholesterol will often go up when you hit menopause. And then that's just talking about the actual physical or the medical things that really are affected by early menopause. But perimenopause causes a lot of shifts emotionally and with sleep and the symptoms. And it does seem with this sort of early perimenopause that women are then having a longer perimenopause period too, where you just don't feel right for this quite longer stretch in life, where it used to be not that much. It was like maybe late 40s, 2 or 3 years, periods would stop. And obviously HRT is a whole interesting thing with our world. I can't prescribe it. I do recommend it. And then I use it along together with homeopathy and herbs and things like that to really help people. But again, I found before in the years that often like herbs and homeopathy were enough. Now I find more often like I do need to get my patients sometimes to be using hormones because what I'm doing is helping, but it's not quite enough. So that's a big change too. And I guess it's the same with, as you say, with the fertility stuff, where we used to easily be able to get people pregnant. We still help a lot, but it's not as definitively easy as it was before. So that's
I'm
interesting.
intrigued to hear you say that you actually prescribe HRT because I always just hear such bad things, how it's linked to various cancers and things like that. And I have just very recently started wondering about this because I overheard a conversation of somebody very proudly saying, oh, I'm on HRT now. And I'm like, I just would not, you couldn't pay me to go on it. And then I was thinking, it's always tricky because the times that we live in right now is actually none of what we're living in is normal. There's artificial light that's shining on me right now, the technology that I'm sitting in,
Absolutely.
I'm not like all of this is abnormal. So
Yeah,
you need to try and think, okay, what would be normal if I wasn't living in this weird, abnormal environment that we're
absolutely.
living in? And then I was thinking, well, our hormones are supposed to kind of drop.
Job.
But then if we're using things like HRT and we're just then propping it up in this eternal search for youth, then is there something that we're on a deeper level missing? Because I'm just turned 47 last week. So I'm starting to have these little hints of perimenopause. I'm like, oh, I now
Yeah,
see what my older friends were talking about. This is like a weird and wacky time. It's kind of like when I was a teenager, but not, but in a
absolutely.
different way. So I'm trying to figure my way through all of this out as well.
No,
And
I've
trying
sat
to
with this. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you go. So, because this is literally the last couple of weeks or so popped in my mind of what is the role of the dropping in estrogen? Because, and I was having this conversation with my husband about why I'm not taking any shit in the house anymore. And I'm like, my estrogen's dropping, and estrogen's about caring for people, and estrogen helps you grow babies, and it was make us motherly. That's dropping now. That's why I don't give a shit anymore about anything. And that's a good thing because I've probably been a little bit carcinosity and trying to
Yes.
please and doing everything for everyone. And that's not always
You're like, whatever.
helpful. And so, okay, this is going a totally different direction to what I was intending this episode to go in, but it's probably an important conversation to have. So I'm in this place at the moment where I'm just trying to figure out, okay, are we supposed to drop these hormones, but now we're artificially lifting it up with HRT? But then also, is it probably dropping more than what it normally would if we weren't in this artificial environment? And then, okay, so I'm going to leave
Yeah.
that like brain
No,
dump over to
absolutely.
you, and you tell me what you think.
I grapple with this a lot, right? On so many levels, because also in Hong Kong, I prescribe so many more supplements than I would probably if I was living somewhere else where the air was clean and food quality was good. So I live constantly in this world of, I'm like doing things naturally, but also bridging a gap based on the fact that the world we're living in is not the world we should be living in,
It's like
right?
a hardcore maintaining cause that you're trying to fight
Absolutely.
against, as well as trying to heal the person. Yeah.
Absolutely, which is just different. And so, yeah, so I've had this, yeah, a lot with HRT. And as I said, in my earlier practice, it wouldn't be something often I took women through, but I have seen this big shift where, yeah, hormones are dropping more. It's women are suffering way more than they were before. And I think there's so many aspects of that, whether it's been inflammation from COVID itself and the vaccines, whether it's been the stress we're living in, the extra toxicity in the world, but also we're living a lot longer as well. So we're also asking our estrogen is dropping earlier. And then we're also asking a body then to keep going for 40 years, 50 years more. And I have so many women from the generation before who didn't do hormones because of the big women's health study in the US, which was like hormones were evil, who are, have such bone density issues and such issues with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and not being able to walk, and they're suffering. So I'm like, so this is what shifted the whole dynamic for me a little bit. Well, I'm like, maybe if we'd done and we had extended a couple of years and we'd gone through perimenopause and menopause quieter and with less inflammation, maybe they'd be better long term. Because some of the newer research is really interesting, is that finding a lot of the damage is in this early perimenopause period where the hormones are going up and down. And if we could actually kind of mitigate that sort of up and down inflammation of the early years. So I don't think I'm not on the bandwagon of stay on hormones forever. There's a huge movement of that. I'm more of the, okay, I think there might be something in for being on hormones for 3 to 5 years, mitigating this change, and maybe that's going to prevent some of the inflammation and help with long-term health. But I am a bit, I was just having this conversation with my sister because she lives in London and she's got like 8 friends that have been diagnosed with breast cancer recently, right? It's a much larger number. And we've all seen this as well. We've seen the cancer rates going up.
Yes.
But she was saying pretty much all of them have used HRT. So even though the research is saying now, okay, bioidentical hormones, really, there isn't an increased risk of breast cancer, and then it might even be a protective, but then she's still seeing maybe. So it's a very interesting conversation. And I don't think we have definitive, clear answers yet. I think it really comes down to the individual, what their risk factors are, how much they're suffering. And that's how I make the decisions. Yeah.
Either way, it's so important to have these conversations and actually just acknowledging that there are all these different factors to take into account. Because even when you were saying women are suffering more now, and then I was thinking, I wonder if we really are suffering more, or it's just that we're talking about it more, because I feel, the change previously was something that women secretly dealt with and they didn't really talk about it. And so a lot of them suffered in silence, whereas these days we are a lot more open about talking about these things. But then I'm also thinking, is it just maybe because I now have friends and we're all going through this that we're talking about it? Maybe it just feels to me like we're talking about it more, but I don't think that's the case, because I listen to my mother-in-law and it doesn't sound like that's something they ever really talked about much. You just kind of suffered in silence. So there's a lot to it. But what would be really interesting now that there's more, it's becoming more public knowledge that the various COVID vaccines have caused a lot of damage, and there's more lawsuits coming out and more, all of this coming out. So it would be so interesting to do some studies with these women getting these cancers. We know the cancer rates are soaring. Everyone knows a friend that's dropped dead for no particular reason in their 40s and 50s. This is now the new normal, right?
Yeah.
So with these people, it would also be interesting, out of those that had HRT and then had breast cancer, how many also had the COVID vaccine? And I guess the beautiful thing with homeopathy is if you are prescribing HRT, we do have
Yeah,
remedies that we can give alongside to
absolutely.
counteract the side effects. And I was just recently chatting with Dr. Jean-Lenel Bagot, and I'm probably going to butcher his name. He's French. It sounds way fancier in French. Who they have a integrated clinic like yours. You should actually totally get in touch with them. It's amazing what they've got, the art therapist there, the craniosacral, they've
Okay.
got the homeopath, the naturopath, the nutritionist, everyone working together. And then all the practitioners have lunch with their patients at this outpatient clinic. And the
Oh,
government pays
amazing.
for the patients to
Yeah,
go there for 1 day a month. It's unbelievable. But he did say these patients all have chemo, conventional chemo drugs, and he uses homeopathy alongside, and it does really well. So maybe that could be something to look at, or maybe do
absolutely.
some more studies that maybe we do put people on HRT and we give them the homeopathic remedies
Pathic
alongside.
remedy. Yeah. And that's what I do. So all my patients, all on a remedy, I'm all doing liver herbs, everything. I'm even if they're with HRT, we're doing it. So we're doing it in a much more safe way all the time.
And you
Yeah.
mentioned something else about the hormones fluctuating up and down. And I'm learning more and more about all of this as I'm going. And I didn't actually quite realize that until more recently that, initially with perimenopause, it's not like a gradual, yeah, maybe just talk to us about that side, because the other fascinating thing that I learned years ago is how the adrenals take over the role of producing estrogen
Yes.
from the ovaries. And so maybe talk to us a little bit more. So this is important for women to know, I think.
Absolutely. And what's also really interesting is as the egg quality goes down too, we get these surges of estrogen in perimenopause because the body is desperately trying to keep these eggs going. So randomly you end up sometimes with estrogen dominance in perimenopause. So I've had some patients where we do blood work and 1 month the estrogen is sky high and then the next month the estrogen is dropped all the way down into like menopause level. And so you can imagine what that does to your physical and mental health, that your hormones are just literally going up and down the entire time. It's interesting. Progesterone, I feel like follows a little bit more of a
More
general
gentle decline.
decline, but it's the estrogen that seems to be do the sort of huge up and down thing. And then you have this estrogen surge with your progesterone low, and that causes all sorts of issues because progesterone is a very calming hormone and it counteracts estrogen. Yeah, so it is a crazy, wacky time. So the only thing I can always say to patients is that you cannot predict. In perimenopause, you cannot predict what's going to happen, right? Like, which is
I
the hard part. But where homeopathy is beautiful because we can regulate and balance the body, it is such a powerful thing to use for menopause too, but especially in this perimenopause time because we can help to mitigate and help the body cope a little bit better with these constant sort of changes.
And I love how this has turned into a perimenopause episode. It was totally not what we intended to do, but I feel it's really important because we've had a couple of perimenopause episodes and they have actually been our episodes that have done the best really well,
Yeah,
which tells me there's lots of women out there seeking
huge
alternative
thinking.
information. Clinically, though, what have you seen this looks like when your clients have this estrogen spike? Just so maybe we can tell our listeners if they may be recognizing this in themselves, what clinically might it look like? Or maybe,
So one of the big things is PMS starts to get really bad. It might be that either someone's never had PMS or they had mild PMS, and suddenly now, like the second half of the cycle, they're just like a crazy person. And we're talking like rage with some of my patients. They're like, I lose it with my husband, I lose it with my children, right? And in a way that they just don't like themselves being this person. There can be a lot of bloating and weight gain and breast tenderness. The weight piece is a big one. I don't know, in Australia, Hong Kong. Yeah, Hong Kong is a very city where people are very conscious the way they look. So this whole weight gain part of perimenopause is a very stressful experience. Sleep is another huge one affected by the hormones going. So I would say that's almost one. I would say the first two symptoms people notice are irritability and sleep issues. That something is not quite right in their system. And then it's interesting, the period stuff, like the shortening periods, the irregular periods, almost come a little bit later. So it's the mood, it's the sleep, it's these really bad PMS symptoms. Interestingly, in Asia, a lot of women have a lot of joint pain and muscle aching and the physical side as well. The hot flashes and stuff, so the traditional menopause symptoms come later when estrogen completely drops. We are seeing much more in this perimenopause of these kind of other symptoms that you wouldn't almost recognize that these are because your hormones are changing. You might blame it on, oh, I'm more stressed, or I'm this, or I'm that. And sometimes, yes, stress is a huge part of it. From a naturopathic perspective and homeopathic perspective, we look a lot at the stress in the adrenal system. And if we go into perimenopause and menopause with a stronger nervous system, a stronger adrenal system, we are going to have less symptoms. So a large part of treatment is strengthening that symptoms, but it's not just stress. These are women who cope well with stress. These are women with big jobs and families, and suddenly they're like, what the hell? I'm crying. Like, why am I crying what's going on? Right. So it's interesting. As you said earlier, it's like puberty and pregnancy and everything suddenly happening again. And you're like, wow, what happened?
I've shared it on the podcast a couple of times, but I'm going to share it again because I love when we can do free stuff for ourselves that will help us, because supplements can be expensive and seeing practitioners, all this, but sometimes there's free stuff like going to bed earlier, exercising, meditation. But a free thing for me that was revolutionary that I want to keep talking about and shouting from the rooftops is 6 months ago, I stopped drinking coffee. Now, I've had this in the past where I started noticing suddenly I was snapping at my kids. And I'm going to be honest, I was yelling at them for no reason. And afterwards, obviously, apologizing. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did that. And then I stopped drinking coffee. And within about 3 days, and this was 6 months ago, I have not yelled at my kids since. And my energy is so much better. It's level. And so where I used to get really like a dump in the afternoon, I don't get that. My kids don't stress me, the tiny little things. And I only had one coffee a day. And I say only because I have so many
You wouldn't
clients,
think.
they say to me, I just have one coffee a day. And that was me. I only had one coffee in the morning. And all I did was cut out my one coffee a day. And I'm like a different person. And it's been 6 months.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. And I recently had another client and I said to her, look, you know how sometimes our clients come in and they tell us our story. And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to make your story into my story, but all I did was I stopped drinking coffee. She had a follow up and she said, Eugenie, you were right. I stopped drinking coffee. I haven't yelled at my kids. Our household is so calm and my energy is great.
Interesting. I'm thinking like biochem, it's definitely liver related somehow because if you think of Chinese medicine and liver heat rising, so definitely coffee. It would be interesting to look at your epigenetics. I don't know if you're a good or bad detoxer of coffee. Do you know?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Interesting. So that would be
But
very
to be fair, in South
interesting.
Africa, I don't know about you, but I had my re-coffee. Although that's actually
Yeah,
chicory. I found out the other day. I didn't even
it's
realize it's
chicory.
mostly
Yeah,
chicory. But we grew up on coffee. I had coffee from probably when I was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. I have a coffee before I go to bed. I have like 10 coffees a day.
interesting. Yeah, but as you
Yeah,
get older, suddenly the liver doesn't do as well. So it's either that or it's related to like your cortisol and
probably the cortisol.
that
I don't
side
know
as
what it
well.
was, but I think
Fascinating.
that that's something that's free, that's so simple that so many people are so addicted to coffee.
Totally.
And
Coffee. And the other big one is alcohol. That's another big free one that can make everybody I know who cuts alcohol is like, wow, suddenly so many symptoms go away as well.
is there anything else you can say about hot flashes? Just what clients can do to help themselves? Have you got any advice
Yeah,
around?
so definitely this is, I feel like when we talk about free stuff, it's harder. Besides obviously going on using bioidentical hormones, but homeopathy is amazingly good if you get the right remedy for hot flashes. And there are certain herbs that I've had really good success with, like maca and black cohosh, and that work really well. But where the free piece comes in, which I notice a lot, is diet and hot flashes. So definitely there is a link to sugar and white carbs and having worse symptoms, and going to more of a high protein, whole grain, lots of veggies, high fiber diet can actually be one of the things that makes a significant difference in perimenopause and menopause. So yeah, there's a lot that we can do free, right?
Yeah,
Like,
amazing. And it's things that we can do to just help ourselves. I've definitely seen a big liver piece as well with the hot flashes because I do this thing called Lego scan. And when I find
okay,
that the liver is struggling, I can give some chalidonium or greater
absolutely.
cell down. But then there's also this piece of the high copper binding with the estrogen in the liver and causing congestions. And I find when we clear that through the liver, then often
Absolutely.
the hot flashes go away as well. But
Yeah,
I
the
guess
liver
that's,
gets underestimated. And I think that's
yeah.
also maybe why we're, as we said, like it's the COVID but it's also all the more toxins in our food and our environment that is making everything worse, right? Because the liver nowadays has so much more that it has to process than it ever did before. We weren't designed. Our livers were not
Mm.
designed to cope with the world that we're living in right now.
And in Chinese medicine, I think liver is related to anger. I have to tell you
Mhm.
another funny story. We did a post on the Narayani bad temper remedy the other day.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
it is out of the, I don't know how many years decade I've had my social media. We've never had a post perform as well as this post on the bad temper remedy, which I
Interesting.
was not expecting because my main audience like women and children. So we do a lot of baby stuff and teething and that sort of stuff. But bad temper has outperformed any post that we have ever done in a decade, which really
Wow.
was very interesting because clearly there's a lot of people out there with bad tempers and anger issues, which is related to the liver. So I don't know. There's that.
That's
Um,
really interesting.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, but it is, right? I think humans are not like, yeah, humans are not as nice as they used to be. It's
We
true.
live in a crazy world for sure.
We do live
Okay.
in a crazy world.
Now, people don't have to be in Hong Kong to come and see you, which is the great thing. They can see you
Absolutely.
online anywhere in the world. So if anybody's like what they heard and they want to get in touch with you, just tell us all the deets of how they get in touch and how they book an appointment.
Sure. So easiest way is to email me. So my email is dr and then my full name, benitaperch@gmail.com. And then I can connect people with one of my receptionists and stuff to book in. Yeah, I do Zooms with patients all around the world and obviously also in person in Hong Kong, which is amazing because some days I'm like, oh, I'm in Estonia, I'm in Italy, I'm in America, I'm in Australia, and then in Hong Kong in person, which is great. So yeah, that's the easiest way. And then also you can look up my profile on imi.com.hk and go, and there are ways of getting in touch through our website as well.
Amazing. And you with obviously Global Natural Health
Yeah.
Solutions as well. And if anybody is seeing you around the world, is it easy enough for them to get testing? You can arrange for them to get testing because it sounds like that's something that you work with as well.
Yeah,
So they can like
definitely. So yeah, we are able to do blood testing obviously through the local areas, and then there's a company that we can use to send functional medicine testing around the world. There's a Scandinavian company that does it. And then in terms of homeopaths and homeopathy and supplements, it again all depends on the country, but I've sort of
Mm,
managed to figure it out in most countries of ways of getting people what they need. Much easier
amazing.
in the world we live in today.
It's much easier. Yeah. Benita, it was so fun chatting with you. I love how this conversation took all sorts of twists
We
and
went
turns that I had no idea was going to happen. They're always the best episodes for me, anyway. I don't know about our listeners, but that's all right. They still listen anyway, so must be doing something right. Tell us a final message that you want to leave our listeners with.
I think the big thing for me, and I guess what drives me to wake up every day and do this, is that I really want to leave the world in a better place and people in a better place. And I think, as we've spoken about, like, that episode is what people, like that post is what people read so much about. It gives you an indication of how much people are having a hard time in the world that we are in today and how much that they don't need to, or that there's so much that we can do to make the world a better place. Like I only cope in my life because I have homeopathy, because I have all the supplements and the things that kind of help my body cope better. And I wish that everybody would have access to what we have access to and the knowledge that we have from little kids, just because there's so much change you can make with little people that then can make the rest of their life so much easier. I love working with children and teens and early 20s because I'm like, there's at the beginning, if you can fix things now, you can make things so much better for everyone long term. So I guess that's my message is don't suffer. Don't be told it's okay or just go on the antidepressant or oh, it's normal to have PMS. Oh, it's normal to be tired all the time. No, none of those things are normal. You don't have to accept them. There's something that you can do. There are people that can help you. So I guess that's the big message that I would like to share.
I want to stop just there because that is the perfect message to end up on. Thank you so much. I really
My
appreciate your time
pleasure.
today.
You too. Thank you so much. That was lovely to meet you as well.
Thanks.